Hi, everybody. It's me, Sarah Soderlund, and I'm coming off of a cold. But I wanted to step on a soapbox just for a second. And yes, it's a meaningful soapbox because you can hear my child struggling in the other room with my husband. But it's on a particular topic that was brought up in a class that I took at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. And their master's program there, which I highly recommend, during the assessment and evaluation of an adult offender, go through a lot of different forensic cases and bring up a lot of different mental health issues, and one of them is battered woman's syndrome. It was kind of interesting because a lot of my peers were surprised. They hadn't heard of this, and there were even a few things that I had learned throughout the program that really surprised me. One of which was that my perception and my perspective of battered woman syndrome was very different than everyone else's. And I want to kind of just explain why. So, battered woman syndrome, or BWS, is defined as the violence of effects, physical, emotional, or mental, upon perceptions, beliefs, and behavior of victims. Usually in a domestic violence situation is where you see this. And it's a victimization, really. And the first time we kind of see this theory pop up was in the 1970s. It was kind of glorified as a use for self-defense in the 1980s, but it actually wasn't ever really legally defined and wasn't actually ever truly understood until 1992. And kind of prior to this, we're learning that women can now go back and open up situations that might explain their behaviors, a lot of times in like homicides of their loved ones, children, husbands. So anyway, there's all kinds of cases that you can look up in the news about battered woman syndrome, but as far as the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual goes, it kind of falls under post-traumatic stress disorder, and we kind of assess it and diagnose it on a very loose definition of standards. It's very subjective. And everyone was like, all of my peers, I mean, very excited about the progress of battered woman syndrome and very excited to see more research being done. And I had to mention a few things about, man, we get so many things from our culture, like the rule of thumb, about beating your spouse or your partner, domestic partner. And a lot of things don't really specify the breakdown of mental illness until we start seeing this battered woman syndrome. And it's the cycle of violence. And if you're beaten as a child, you're going to, recreate these or project these beliefs. And, that things are physically happening that create a helplessness, a learned helplessness. And that we can't help but kill our husbands in our sleep. And people think this is okay. And they're like, yeah, we're going to learn more about this. And, battered woman syndrome will be a real thing. I thought, God, that's really scary. Because I experienced childhood abuse. And I've also experienced domestic violence. And I think one of the worst things that happens through that progress is that you become a victim, or that you allow yourself to become a victim. And a lot of really successful therapies for people that have been through, struggling times or situations like that, where they felt they needed help. You receive treatment through empowerment. You learn that it's not your fault. But at the same time, we kind of have to balance cause and effect. And I think if somebody were to diagnose me with a mental illness because I had been abused, that it might be hurtful. It's already shameful, and it's already scary, and it's already an anxiety-ridden experience to come out of the victim closet and to share your story. It makes you more exposed, which is exactly what you're, trying to take back. But you do it, and you go through therapy, and then here we're trying to further a research that victimizes the person to being mentally ill. And yes, it helps with assessment, I guess, but think about that process. If there's an actual mental illness that is battered woman syndrome, someone might take my children from me, or there might be a situation where I am mandated to get treatment, that I am removed from my home and from my life, that because it's post-traumatic stress, that's very subjective. Anything in life could trigger it. It's very difficult to determine what might or might not happen. So there's going to be a monitoring, there's going to be a probation, there's going to be a lot of government intervention that tries to protect society and protect other people. And it's kind of that precognitive crime concept that really suppresses a person's civil liberties, in my opinion. And I also kind of mentioned to my peers that consider the health organizations, the big pharma. It's a business. And it's kind of scary to think if we absolutely diagnose something down to a cycle of violence, which is very subjective, anybody could be held accountable for anything at any point in time and deemed unsafe. It makes you a great consumer to big pharma, to the requirement of getting treatment, medication, all sorts of things. And, you know, there were some cases in 1994 where this came up particularly, and, you know, big healthcare didn't want battered woman syndrome to be a diagnosis that could pass for self-defense, because if it were viable enough for a court situation, that it might be viable enough for someone to say, well, I'm a battered woman and I want to use that as a predetermined health issue. And they were kind of hoping people wouldn't have this for a, you know, preconditioned health issue. It all came down to money, basically, and lobbyists and whatnot. But this battered woman syndrome, it's an interesting concept. And I was talking with my husband, and, you know, where does it stop? Does it stop at being held accountable by our peers, by a societal taboo or a societal norm? Are we really giving our government way too much power and dictating what is abuse, what isn't, what's self-defense, what isn't? If I were abused by my parents, then if I later kill my husband, I can't be held accountable for that. What about all those people in between? You know, what are all the factors that are going to start to be monitored and regulated? And then, of course, shouldn't the parents be kind of held as accomplice? Be held accountable in some way for the future crime that you commit on their behalf as a victim? It just creates a lot of issues. And I'm interested in whether you think those issues are good or those issues are bad. I guess, are you a liberal or are you not? Or does that matter? Do you think battered woman syndrome is a hypocritical joke in itself because it's an extremely sexist mental health issue? Can mental health and mental illness be sexist? Is that okay? Is that politically correct? I'm interested in your thoughts, and I'm interested in what you think, and I'd love to get some feedback. So please post below or check out paranormalsarah.com. You can find me on Facebook, you can find me on Twitter, you can find me anywhere, but I would love to know your thoughts. So until then, rant over, I guess.